All right, let's dive into something pretty unexpected today. We're going to be talking about, get this, South Korean wine.
Korean wine.
Yep, Korean wine. I know. When I first heard about it, I was like, Korea, wine. It doesn't exactly scream wine country, does it?
Not really, no.
But I was reading this fascinating book. It was actually written in Portuguese, all about South Korea and its culture. And there was a whole section on their wine industry.
Oh, wow.
And honestly, I was blown away. It's this incredible story of like these rebels and pioneers, going against the grain, defying the odds, and creating something truly special. So I had to have you on to break it all down for us because honestly, where do you even begin with Korean wine?
Well, I think the first thing to understand is that it's a pretty young industry. It really only took off in the late 20th century.
Okay, so we're talking a very recent development in terms of winemaking history. What were those early Korean wines like? Did they even taste good?
Well, imagine simple table wines, crafted mostly from American grapes like Niagara. Nothing too fancy, but it was a start.
So they started with what they knew, tested the waters a bit. But here's the thing that boggles my mind. Korea has got those scorching hot summers, right? And then those winters where it's like freeze your toes off cold. Not exactly rolling hills of vineyards, is it?
You're absolutely right. That climate is the biggest hurdle Korean winemakers face. It's a real battle against Mother Nature.
So how do they do it? How do they even grow grapes in those
It's
conditions?
all about adapting and innovating. Some have these greenhouses, creating these perfect little microclimates so the grapes can actually thrive.
It's like they're saying, okay, Mother Nature, we see your challenge and we're going to outsmart you.
Exactly. And they've gotten really strategic about which grape varietals they plant, focusing on ones that can handle those colder temperatures.
Survival of the fittest grape. I mean, I read about this winery, Duran. They're actually making ice wine from grapes that freeze right on the vine. That's next level dedication right there.
It really is. They primarily use the Jiangsu grape for their ice wine. It's this really interesting hybrid varietal. They just let it hang on the vine until winter hits and freezes those grapes solid.
So those grapes are basically little ice jewels by that point.
And then they press them while they're still frozen. It concentrates all the sugars and the acidity. What you get is this incredibly luscious, sweet wine, like bursts of apricot and honey with this touch of spice.
Now that's something I gotta try. Korean ice wine, who knew? It seems like they're not just adapting, they're kind of taking it to another level. Like they're weaving this respect for tradition with, I don't know, maybe a bit of rebellious creativity.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
That same spirit, that resilience and drive to innovate, it's actually deeply ingrained in Korean culture itself. Ever heard of Hansik?
Hansik. It rings a bell, but refresh my memory.
It's basically the heart and soul of Korean cuisine. The
Uh-huh.
focus is on harmony, on creating a meal that's not just delicious, but also beautiful to look at. Think fresh, seasonal ingredients, and every dish perfectly balanced.
Ah, okay, it's coming back to me now. So you're saying they're taking that Hansic philosophy, that attention to balance and harmony, and they're applying it to winemaking as well.
Absolutely. It's all about crafting wines that enhance the dining experience, not overwhelm it. You'll find that Korean reds, for example, tend to have these lovely aromas of red and black fruits, maybe a hint of spice, sometimes a little herbal complexity,
Mm.
but they're designed to be really food friendly. So the tannins are smooth, the acidity is just right, everything in harmony. Now with the whites, you're talking something else, often these vibrant citrus notes, delicate white flowers, and then this really cool minerality that makes them unique.
Minerality. Okay, now we're getting all fancy with the wine terms, but seriously, what does that actually taste like?
Well, think of it like a subtle earthiness, almost salty. It just adds this whole other dimension to the wine, like a whisper of those volcanic soils where some of these grapes are grown. And the taste, they're usually light and refreshing, which makes them perfect for pairing with all those lighter, brighter flavors in Korean cuisine.
I can already imagine myself sitting down to a plate of kimchi with a nice chilled glass of Korean white wine. Sounds like a match made in heaven. But speaking of interesting wines, those ice wines we were talking about, you mentioned they're made with a hybrid grape.
Yeah, the Chansu grape. And that brings us to another really fascinating aspect of Korean winemaking. They're not just using European varietals, they're also experimenting with hybrids like Changsu and Campbell Early.
It's like they're blazing their own trail, creating these wines that are uniquely Korean. I love that.
Exactly. And these hybrids are proving to be pretty adaptable to Korea's climate. And honestly, they're yielding some pretty exciting results.
Yeah.
Campbell Early, for instance, it's actually one of the oldest hybrid grapes in Korea.
Really?
It was mostly used for juice and table grapes, but now it's actually finding its way into some really interesting wines, both reds and rosés.
So they're taking this like humble grape and elevating it to wine-worthy status. What kind of flavors are we talking about with these hybrid wines?
Well, the Campbell Early Reds often have these deep, dark fruit flavors. Sometimes you get a hint of spice, even a little bit of chocolate. And the rosés can be surprisingly complex. You might get notes of strawberry, watermelon, and a touch of herbal complexity.
I am so intrigued. Okay, but we can't talk about Korea without mentioning their, let's face it, obsession with technology. Are they bringing any of that tech into the vineyards?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, making ice wine, that's a nod to their traditional methods for sure.
Yep.
But Korean winemakers are all about embracing the latest and greatest tech. Some are actually using drones to monitor their vineyards.
Drones in the vineyard. What is this, a sci-fi movie?
It's pretty wild. They can gather all kinds of data on things like soil conditions, how ripe the grapes are. It's like having this bird's eye view of the entire vineyard right at their fingertips.
I bet that's a game changer for dealing with those, shall we say, interesting climate conditions we were talking about.
It definitely helps. Makes everything a lot more precise. Speaking of precision, they're also starting to play around with precision fermentation techniques.
Precision fermentation. Okay, you're going to have to break that one down for me. What's the big deal?
It's about having this really fine-tuned control over every single step of the fermentation process. Temperature, yeast strains, even oxygen levels.
Wow.
They can basically fine-tune the flavor profile of their wines, really bring out the best of each grape varietal.
So it's like they're taking this ancient art of winemaking and they're giving it this high-tech makeover. It seems like tradition meets innovation is the name of the game here, and it's clearly working.
It is. And they're not stopping there either. They're also starting to explore native Korean yeasts.
Native yeasts, what does that mean?
So most winemakers, they use commercially produced yeasts.
Right.
But Korean winemakers, they're trying to actually isolate and cultivate yeasts that are specific to their region.
Okay, so why is that so important?
Because these native yeasts have the potential to create flavors that are truly unique to Korean terroir. They're like this microbial fingerprint, if you will.
That is so cool. It just goes to show how deeply connected they are to their land and their culture, even in their winemaking. So we've got this young, vibrant industry, a dedication to both tradition and innovation, and a whole lot of passion. What do you think? What does the future hold for Korean wine?
I think the future's looking pretty bright for Korean wine.
Yeah.
We're seeing this like surge in the domestic market. More and more Koreans are like really into drinking local wines.
It makes sense, right? Supporting local businesses. Plus, I bet there's a lot of national pride tied into it.
Oh, definitely. There's a real sense of like, hey, we can make amazing wine right here in Korea. But I think it goes beyond just Korea. I think Korean wines have a real shot at making it big globally.
I mean, why not? It seems like the world is always hungry for the next big thing in wine.
It is. And people are already starting to take notice. There's this curiosity about the unique flavors, those innovative techniques we were talking about. And then there's that whole cultural story behind each bottle. Plus, the Korean government is really getting behind it, promoting their wines at international competitions, trade shows. They're really putting Korean wine on the map.
So you're thinking we'll be seeing Korean wines popping up in wine shops and restaurants worldwide pretty soon?
I think it's only a matter of time.
I can totally see it. People getting together for Korean barbecue, but instead of soju, they're cracking open a bottle of like a Korean Cabernet Sauvignon or maybe one of those crisp Jiangsu rosés. It's a whole new way to experience the culture.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And what I find really inspiring is that Korean winemakers aren't just sitting back and, waiting for things to happen. They're constantly pushing the boundaries, experimenting, always searching for ways to like perfect their craft.
There's that passion again. You can just feel it. Honestly, when we started this deep dive, I was a total skeptic. I mean, Korean wine, it just didn't compute for me. But after learning about it all, I'm a believer. The fact that they're making these incredible wines despite the climate challenges and using all this cutting-edge technology while still honoring their traditions, it's remarkable.
It is. I think it speaks to a larger point too, There's always something new to discover out there, even in places you might not expect.
That's so true. It's like a reminder to, keep an open mind, be curious, and not be afraid to step outside your comfort zone.
Exactly.
So, as we wrap up our little adventure into the world of Korean wine, I think the question we should all be asking ourselves is, what will we discover next? What's out there waiting for us to explore? Maybe it's time to raise a glass to Korean wine, try something new and unexpected, and just embrace the adventure. Cheers to that.